Hey, welcome back, Ironman. We're glad to have you back here with us. We're going through a new series. This is session 2, and we're looking at God. This session is called "God Owns It All." God owns everything, and it really is true. And we're going to jump straight into the very first verse, and it says, "Everything under heaven belongs to me." It comes from Job 41, verse 11, and it's true. God does own everything, and we have to look at that. That we are just his managers. We are his stewards of his money. We are the caretakers of his earth. He really does own everything, and we need to be faithful servants with that. Let's go through a couple other verses. His ownership goes to all different kinds of levels. We look at the first one. It says, Psalm 24:1, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. Haggai 2:8 says, the silver is mine and the gold is mine, declares the Lord Almighty. Deuteronomy 8, which is probably the most relevant out of all of these for us, verse 18 says, but remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth. So while we may think that we're out there working and grinding and we're the reason for all of our success, remember that without God's hand and without his touch on your life, that you are not going to be out there producing wealth. We need to give God the credit for this. So the principle here is God owns everything, and we're simply managers of it. We're the caretakers of it. So God never relinquished ownership over the earth. Everything in the earth, everything is still his. He didn't die and leave it to anybody. He didn't will it to anybody. He didn't divide it up amongst all of us. He still is the primary owner. He is the owner. And he has no shortage of resources. And I think we tend to think that, there's only a limited amount of blessings out there that he can put on people, that he can give to people financially. But that's not the case. And if we can ever get this understanding of ownership, that God is the owner and that I am the manager, this is all going to make way more sense. He's entrusted this to me. Okay, he has not given it to me. He has entrusted it to me. He has given me stewardship over it. He is going to let me manage it for him. We don't have entitlements to these assets. As long as we look at this like this is just God's, it doesn't matter. It's so much easier and more free to live that way. I had a friend of mine not long ago who crashed his car. I had an extra car at my house, and I loaned him my car for a few months. And I had some friends of mine telling me, nah, that's probably not a good idea with all the insurance implications and all that kind of stuff. But I just told him, I said, look, man, that's God's car. If God wants to use me to let this guy have a car for a few months, then God will take care of all the rest of that stuff. And he delivered the car back to me about 3 months later, no worse for the wear. And I was able to sell it a couple of months later, which is what my plan was anyway. So everything turned out great. But we have to live like that. We have to live with an open hand. We can't just live with everything just clenched tight around our possessions. We should be thinking like stewards, like investment managers, looking for the best place to invest these resources that God's given us. What kind of ministries, what kind of people do we want to invest in? What kind of time do we want to spend on certain things? And what's interesting is the more that we give, the more that we want to give, the more we're excited about giving. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, that you've actually felt excited about giving. The other day I had $100 in my wallet, have no idea where it came from. I don't normally just go around handing out money, but we had a friend of ours that was getting ready to go on a missions trip. She had just posted on Facebook that she was raising money to go, and it made my wife really happy for us to be able to just give her some money to help get her on her way. I had no hesitation at all about handing her the $100 on a Sunday morning. It felt so good. It made me happy to do that, and to know that she felt blessed by that too was a big deal. It says in 2 Corinthians 9:7, each of you should give what you have decided in your heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And isn't that true? God doesn't want you to give reluctantly. He doesn't want you to give begrudgingly. He wants you to give because you want to give, and because it's a way to thank God for all of the goodness that he has done. He really does want us to find joy in our giving. And if we don't give, we're actually robbed of that joy. God knows that if we're if we're holding on tight to our money, we're missing out on that blessings and the seeds of joy that he's going to put in all areas of our lives. I want to read this to you. 2 Corinthians 8:2 says, in the midst of a very severe trial, their overflowing joy and their extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity. So Paul's talking about a group of people that had nothing, and yet they still wanted to bless him and his companions as they were getting ready to go on a mission trip. They're in the middle of a severe trial, okay, but they somehow overflowing joy was able to be coupled with that in the same verse. They had extreme poverty, but they also were rich in their generosity. Sometimes it's a real privilege. It should be a privilege for all of us to give, but oftentimes it's the poor people in the world that find the most joy in giving. Here's a video from a small church in Liberia that I took when I visited there about 3 years ago. Watch this. It's also very humbling to receive gifts and to receive hospitality from people that you know you have a lot more money than, and people that you bless that you know can never pay you back. Those are the best type of people to give to. Those are the ones that really, truly is what I think God is wanting us to do. When we're visiting other countries and we can give shoes or clothing or food, those were all the things we did in Liberia when we went there. I've lived in Africa for 11 years. I've had many, probably 100 opportunities to do this with teams that have come through and with our own basketball teams and things like that. And they're so appreciative, the people, and they're so thankful when we can bless them. And it was no big deal really for us to do that, but for them, how could they repay that? And we didn't expect them to repay that. We didn't want them to repay that. We just wanted them to be thankful to God that we were able to be used for that. It's also humbling to receive gifts and hospitality from people that have a way greater need than you. We've often, through our years of living in Africa, we're able to donate shoes and clothing and food and different trips that we've taken, dozens of missions teams that have come and gone, and we've been able to bless people with that. But when a pastor, when a local pastor or a local family will put you up in their house and they'll give you their bed and they'll give you the best food that they have, the best mattress that they have. I had friends of mine in Guatemala. We were with a basketball team, and they had a homestay set up for us. And so our team all divided up and went into different homes. And we all came back the next day. It was just full of funny stories about what happened at the houses. But one family all slept outside so that my two teammates could have the only bed in the house. And dinner that night, they said, was sandwiches with ketchup. That was it. But they said the family was happy and they were fun and they were singing and it was just a great time. But they were so humbled that this family gave up their only bedroom that they had for my two teammates. When the tabernacle was being built back in the Old Testament, people were so caught up in this that, let me read this for you, Exodus 36, 5-7. And said to Moses, the people said to Moses, the people are bringing more than enough for doing the work the Lord has commanded to be done. Then Moses gave an order, and they sent this word throughout the camp. No man or woman is to make anything else as an offering for the sanctuary. And so the people were restrained from bringing more, because what they already had was more than enough to do all of the work. Wouldn't we love to have that problem at our church or any of the churches? Okay, guys, really, don't bring any more. Okay, we got plenty. We have all the money and resources we need to do everything all the work that we need to have done. That's crazy, right? I mean, those guys were so excited about giving that Moses had to tell them to stop. I can't imagine Palmer ever saying, no, guys, stop giving. It's too much. It's just too much. Okay, we're not like that these days. I don't know I don't know of a church that is like that. Not just our church, but any church where we have to tell people not to give. Our giving is a reflexive response to the grace of God in our lives. We give as we are thankful. It doesn't come out of, trying to be a philanthropist or or to do good or to try to earn our way into heaven in any kind of way like that. It comes because of the transforming work of Jesus Christ in our lives. We know that it's his money. We know that with these resources and this money, we can do so many great things for his kingdom. And we give because he first gave to us. And that's what it comes down to. We're actually giving this money to God. We're not giving it to projects. We're not giving it to pay bills. We're giving it to God because that's what he wants us to do. When God's grace touches you, you can't help but respond in a generous way. God said this in Numbers 18:24. He said, "Instead, I give to the Levites as their inheritance the tithes that the Israelites present as an offering to the Lord. That is why I said concerning them, they will have no inheritance among the Israelites." Remember when they were dividing up who was going to get what land and all that? Okay, the Levites were going to get the tithes and offerings. But I want you to look at this. It says, "I give to the Levites as their inheritance the tithes and offerings that the Israelites present to the Lord," not to the Levites. Okay, the money was given to the Lord, and the Levites were to get their share of it. But let's never forget that that money was given to God. First and foremost, we need to give our money to God before anything else. It's an act of worship. Okay, giving jumpstarts our relationship with God. Why is that? Because it shows that we have trust in him. It opens up, like I said in our lesson last week, it opens up our fists so that we can be generous. God says this, "If a man shuts off his ears to the poor, he will cry out and he will not be answered." That comes from Proverbs 21:13. Okay, our prayers are affected when we are not being generous. Isaiah 58, verse 6 through 10, God says that his willingness to answer our prayers is directly affected by whether or not we are caring for the hungry, the needy, and the oppressed. Okay, our relationship with God is directly affected by how generous we are and how willing to give that we are. You see, giving infuses life with joy. It interjects this dimension between an ordinary day and an extraordinary day. And I want you to look for opportunities as you go out this week. Look for ways that you can advance God's kingdom. Be joyful about giving. Whenever God puts something on your heart, remember, he's going to bless you. The rewards are going to be in heaven, and that's what we're going to talk about in our next session. We'll see you next week.